Alright, hello everybody. Friendly Red here, back for another report of games on my radar. October is here, which means we've got lots of great new games to look forward to, but also the beginning of the spookiest time of the year. I feel like I should spruce up the place a bit and really get into the spooky season mood. Perfect. Anyways, we've got lots of goodies here for October, so let's get into it. Spooky month begins with a game that is decidedly anything but, and it's one I didn't even know about until making this script, that being Kind Words 2. Kind Words is a very different game, and it may be fair to call it more of an experience than game. Yes, there is of course still control and interactivity here, but it's for sure less gamey feeling than a lot of other video games out there. But for good reason. In Kind Words, the gameplay consists of writing letters and helpful, kind words to fellow players in the game, all set within a cozy and relaxing environment to help facilitate that experience. I never actually did too much in the original game, but it was a nice and relaxing escape from stress and other problems every now and then, and it can for sure be nice to get kind and encouraging words from strangers, or provide some yourself. Kind Words 2 seems to keep this idea at the forefront, but with more added features and things to do outside of just the letter writing that definitely make it seem more like a proper game, and less so a platform for communication, I guess. It's a very comforting and nice surprise to see a game like Kind Words get a sequel, and it's something I for sure want to look into and play, and I'm glad I learned of it here before its release. Also, with lo-fi city pop being part of the title, I think it's safe to say we're going to be getting some appropriately calming and enjoyable music here, as was the case in the first game. For sure, keep your ears open and ready for some nice new tunes once the game is out, if you're into that genre or style of music. Kind Words 2 will be releasing on Monday, October 7th for PC and Mac. On the next day, October 8th, we have something very, very different from Kind Words, and properly spooky too. Indeed, the remake of Silent Hill 2 will finally be gracing the disk drives and SSDs of PS5 and PC players, respectively. Now, I personally do not have any history or experience with the Silent Hill franchise, as by the time I properly got into playing video games, the series had peaked, and was starting to go into its, dark era, we'll call it. However, I obviously am aware of how important, popular, and influential the original 3 games are, and right there in the middle sits Silent Hill 2, which to this day not only remains as many people's favorite game in the series, but as one of the best survival horror games ever made. You know, in a way, it's kind of similar to Resident Evil 2. A super duper mega popular survival horror sequel that's beloved by many, and one I'm sure many new players, myself included, will be able to experience for the first time ever. I'm very much looking forward to trying out this legendary game, though, at the same time, I'm a bit conflicted as to when I want to play it. There's really no better time than the spookiest month of the year to play something like Silent Hill 2, but at the same time, there's so many other games that I also really want to play, and have a bit more of a vested interest in them that it makes it hard to decide on if I pick this up on release, or wait a bit on it. Regardless of all that, I'm just glad to see that this long-awaited remake is finally almost here, and I really, truly hope it lives up to the fans' expectations. I also hope it'll be enjoyable for those of us who are new to the series, and be enough of a success to carry that momentum forward into all the other upcoming Silent Hill game projects. The remake of Silent Hill 2 will be releasing on Tuesday, October 8th for PS5 and PC, with versions for other platforms planned for a later date. Moving 3 days on from Silent Hill's 2nd, we've got another return of a fan-favorite series, that being the return of the Budokai Tenkaichi series, now known as Dragonball, Sparking Zero. And now this is what I'm talking about. Sparking Zero is a game that I and many Dragon Ball fans have been waiting on for ages. And it's kind of unreal to think that we're this close to being back in the screaming, powered-up glory of the Budokai Tenkaichi series. As a brief history lesson, the Budokai Tenkaichi series of Dragon Ball games were 3D arena fighting games that released back during the Xbox, PS2, Wii era, and the third game in particular still maintains a legendary status amongst not only the Budokai Tenkaichi series, but all Dragon Ball games in general. Hell, all anime fighting games in general, I'd argue. Third game was absolutely packed to the brim with modes, content, and most importantly, characters. 162 of them to be exact. The game let you play as basically any and all characters from the entire series' history up to that point, even ones that you'd think wouldn't be allowed in a fighting game, like Fat Janemba or Hirudegarn, as well as characters I'm sure no one even really wanted or cared about, like Apul and Salza. For a game that released in 2007, I still find it impressive just how much they crammed into it. And for the longest time, it remained the ultimate Dragon Ball sandbox dream match simulator of all time. And until now. Almost 20 years on from Budokai Tenkaichi 3, we're finally getting a proper follow-up here with Sparking Zero, and it's looking exactly like what I and many fans have wanted for years. Basically just Budokai Tenkaichi 4, which this game essentially is, just with a new name. Not only is the 3D arena fighting here, and looking better than ever, we importantly have the absolutely insanely huge roster of playable characters, which is even larger than Budokai Tenkaichi 3's, with the launch roster of Sparking Zero boasting 182 characters to choose from. And if that wasn't enough for us, we're set to get even more added as DLC, which means that by the time all is said and done with this game, we'll probably be looking at over 200 characters in just one single Dragon Ball game. Ever since this project's reveal, I've been patiently anticipating the day it would arrive, and I'm very glad to see that we're this close to the return of one of my all-time favorite game series from my youth. I cannot wait to get my hands on this game, and I hope it lives up to any and everything I and all the fans have wanted for so long. And for newer Dragon Ball fans, well, I think it's safe to say that they're in for a great time. I'm glad more people than ever can experience the Budokai Tenkaichi series now and understand what makes it, to me and many others, the ultimate Dragon Ball game. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero will be releasing on Friday, October 11th for PS5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. And the very same day as Sparking Zero, we're being blessed with another fantastic looking game here, and while it certainly nails the anime aesthetic it's going for, much like Sparking Zero, it is most certainly not an arena fighter, but instead a hybrid real-time action and turn-based combat role-playing game. If those hints weren't clear, our release here for the 11th is none other than Meteor ReFantazio, Atlus's brand new fantasy JRPG. I love me a good Atlus game, and they've been on a bit of a hot streak this year, giving us a modern-day remake of Persona 3 in the form of Persona 3 Reload, the definitive version of the 5th mainline SMT game in the form of Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, and most recently before Meteor here, the DLC expansion epilogue for Persona 3 Reload, episode Igus, The Answer. And now, here near the end of 2024, we have their latest creation, and wholly new IP in quite some time, I think, with the release of Meteor ReFantazio. Personally, I've been avoiding pretty much all trailers and info on this game ever since they held the first ever presentation on the game back in April. This came up recently in my State of Play video I did, but I don't know, I usually tend to steer clear of trailers and all the other pre-release marketing for games I'm already really interested in, and know I'll be buying at launch regardless, as I like to have as blind of a first experience as possible, with any and all surprises intact. But even without seeing or knowing any more of the recent details revealed about the game, I can still provide some info here real quick. As I said earlier, Meteor here is a wholly new, original game from Atlus, though anyone who's familiar with their SMT or Persona series should feel right at home here in this new title, as lots of the minds and talent behind those games return here to work on Meteor. Aside from the setting going into fantasy territory, which is a pretty big departure from the more modern settings you usually see in Persona or SMT, the other big change in Meteor is the combination of real-time action alongside the more familiar turn-based combat fans of Atlus's games know. It's a really cool combination, and I think it'll do a good job of keeping encounters feeling different and fresh as the adventure goes on. I'm also really curious to see if it'll be possible to ignore one type of combat over the other. Like, will it be possible for players to clear the game without going into the turn-based system, or maybe the real-time one? Maybe there will be self-imposed challenges to try and avoid real-time battles, turn-based ones, and so on. I'm sure there's tons I've missed on the news and info side these last 5 months since that initial presentation, and I cannot wait to see what the full game has in store for us. We don't have too much longer to wait now, and hey, if you're interested in trying out the game, Atlus has you covered, as they actually just released a demo for it during the making of this video. Of course, I'll be passing on the demo, as I'm cool with waiting just a bit longer to play the full game once it's out, but it's great to see Atlus do this, and I hope it can get even more people interested in what's looking to be another masterclass JRPG from them in a year already filled with great Atlus games, and JRPGs in general. Meteor ReFantazio will be releasing on Friday, October 11th for a PS4, PS5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. Jumping over to the next week in October, on the 17th, we see the release of Super Mario Party Jamboree. It's been 3 years since the last Mario Party game on Switch, and you know what that means. A new Mario Party game on Switch. However, unlike the previous two series entries on Switch, Jamboree is looking to be the most fully featured and least flawed of the bunch. See, Super Mario Party was okay, though I feel it had more negatives tied to it than positives. There weren't that many boards, and none of them were really anything special, to be honest. The forced use of a single Joy-Con in combination with the motion control-centric minigames, no online play at launch, lots of filler modes, I could go on, but the point is that it really wasn't much of a step up from what we got previously on Wii U, and certainly not anywhere close to the heights of the series we saw on GameCube. Thankfully, the next game, Mario Party Superstars, was a vast improvement, featuring classic remade game boards from the original 3 games on N64, a collection of over 100 of the best minigames from the entire series, proper online play, support for traditional controllers. It was the best Mario Party had been in a long time. And sure, it may not have been the most exciting of releases due to its reliance on legacy content, but it at least meant that what we were getting was going to be good, tried and true Mario Party. And I think that's what the series needed at the time. Of course, as I said, it's been 3 years since that point, which means it's time for a new Mario Party, which brings us here to Jamboree. And honestly, from what we've seen, this is looking to be that properly new, exciting Mario Party we've been waiting on ever since that original Super Mario Party, but without all of the blemishes and downsides that plagued that release. We've got a good selection of 7 boards, with 5 of them being wholly new and quite fun looking, and 2 returning from previous titles, over 110 minigames, the return of Superstar's proper online multiplayer, plus a pretty wild-looking new online mode that features 20 players at once, called the Koopathlon. Indeed, it would seem this new Mario Party is living up to its title of being a jam-packed jamboree, and it'll be fun to dive back into some crazy, wacky, and somewhat frustrating fun with my friends here real soon. Super Mario Party Jamboree will be releasing on Thursday, October 17th, exclusively on Nintendo Switch. Creeping up on the spookiest day of the spookiest month, we've got a proper spooky game here to discuss, our first one since the remake of Silent Hill 2 we talked about earlier. On the 22nd, we'll see the early access launch of No More Room in Hell 2, a long-awaited sequel to the classic PC co-op survival game. Honestly, it's been a super long time since I played the original, as it was one of the first PC games I remember playing and frequenting, as it was a free game, and pretty easy to run. I can't remember too much specifics, though there are some general beats about the game I remember. At its core, it was a first-person PvE cooperative survival game, where you could team up with your friends and other players and attempt to escape the zombie outbreak that was overrunning whatever stage you played in. While there were firearms in the game, melee combat was more so the focus, and it would appear all of this remains true in the sequel, just with much improved visuals and a singular, massive map to explore that seemingly is going to open up more as the game progresses towards its full release. Some things that did stick in my mind after all these years that are making a return in the sequel are the permadeath mechanic and the infection status. In the original, you could actually become infected, and while you could prolong it, it wasn't actually curable, meaning you would eventually die and return as a zombie, potentially becoming a threat to your remaining teammates. It was a really cool mechanic that I enjoyed, as it made even just a single zombie a big threat, and really forced you to work together and be as careful as you could be. Could also lead to difficult decisions to make, as if your allies were infected, you have to make some tough calls. Do you just leave them behind to their fate, or perhaps offer them a merciful death? Because remember, if you don't, they may come for you later on instead. Now, the sequel here isn't going to be free to play like the original was, but it's also not a fully priced game either. And for $30, I think it could provide some nice zombie slaying fun with friends. I'll probably wait on this one just a bit myself, however, as I want to see how the early access launch goes and what players are saying and thinking about that version of the game before I jump in. No More Room in Hell 2 will be releasing into early access on Tuesday, October 22nd for PC. Moving away from the spooky games again for now, the 25th sees the release of 2 titles to discuss, with one of them being one of my most anticipated games of the year. We'll start with the arguably less interesting one, which is Sonic X Shadow Generations. Now, please do not take that the wrong way. I absolutely adore Sonic Generations, and this remaster here is looking to be the best version of the game, but at the end of the day, it is still just Sonic Generations, or at least it would be, if it weren't for those few extra strings of letters in the title. Yes, not only does this title serve as an excellent remaster for Sonic Generations from 2011, but it also contains brand new content focusing on our favorite little hedgehog, Shadow. If this was just a flat-out remaster of Sonic Generations, then that'd still be awesome, but all the new content that was made for the Shadow portion of this game is honestly really cool to see, and I think this makes for an exciting release, regardless of if you've played Generations or not. If you missed out on it back in 2011, then you're really in for a treat, as you'll get to experience what is probably still the best modern-day 3D Sonic game, alongside some nostalgic blasts from the past in the form of classic Sonic's 2D stages, in addition to the new Shadow content. And for those of us who have played Generations, we've got the new stuff to look forward to first and foremost, but hey, I won't pass up an opportunity to replay Generations, especially on modern hardware, looking and running better than ever. I'm really looking forward to this one, and even past the game's launch, we've got more to look forward to, as there will be special DLC release for the game later in December as a tie-in to the upcoming third Sonic the Hedgehog movie, which, much like this version of Generations, features Shadow prominently, though sounding a bit more like a certain Keanu Reeves we all know and love. Sega weren't lying about this being the year of Shadow, huh? Sonic X Shadow Generations will be releasing on Friday, October 25th for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series consoles, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now, onto that most anticipated game I mentioned, A bit over a year from its initial release in Japan, we're finally getting the English release of Ys 10 Nordics, the latest chapter in the long-running story of Adol Christian. I'm still a relatively fresh face when it comes to the Ys series, having only really gaining an interest in it earlier this year after seeing and hearing about this game. I was originally going to wait for this new game to release to be my first foray into the series, but I ended up picking up the two most recent titles, Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Donna and Ys 9 Monstrum Nox, ahead of 10's release. I actually made a video on 8 back when I was playing it, and since that time I've not only completed it, but 9 as well, and I am very happy I decided to play both of those in preparation for 10's release. They were both excellent action RPGs in their own rights, and they made my excitement for 10 here skyrocket to new heights. I was already excited for the game, but after playing the previous entries and seeing more about this game as we got closer and closer to its release, it really put Ys 10 into the position it's in for me right now, being one of, if not my most anticipated release, of the later half of 2024. Everything that was great in 8 and 9 seems to be present in 10, but with much improved visuals, making for the best looking game in the series to date, a new and refined combat system, focusing on just 2 controllable characters, naval exploration and ship-based combat, and probably even more banging tunes and melodic melodies throughout. No doubt, Ys 10 will end up being one of the finest action RPGs of the year, and I'm seriously so stoked that I'm this close to finally playing it. I would of course highly recommend playing 8 or 9, but I also wouldn't blame you if you were interested in 10 here and want to just check that out first instead. Ys 10 Nordics will be releasing on Friday, October 25th for PS4, PS5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. And so, we find ourselves here at the final day of the spookiest month, Halloween, the 31st. Always lots of tricks and treats to be had on this day, and that applies to the gaming side of things as well. We have 2 releases to look at here, with one of them being appropriately themed for Halloween, no less. Starting with that holiday-accurate one, on this Halloween day of 2024, we see the return of another 7th gen cult classic, much like we saw last month with Lollipop Chainsaw. This time around, though, it's Shadows of the Damned that's making a comeback in the form of Shadows of the Damned Hella Remastered. And the similarities keep stacking up, because also like Lollipop Chainsaw, I actually don't really remember too much about this one, other than it being similar to Resident Evil 4 in some ways. I mean, gameplay-wise, I think that fits, as Shadow of the Damned is a third-person shooter with survival horror elements, without leaning too much into them, and instead focusing more on action and fun. You know, kinda like Resident Evil 4. Unlike Resident Evil 4, however, this game is much weirder, wacky, and bizarre, but that's what also makes it unique and appealing. I mean, the whole premise of the game has you going through the underworld to save your girlfriend, all the while fighting through all kinds of strange denizens of said underworld, while your partner, gun, sidekick, flaming skull thing hams it up with you and can also turn into a revolver known as the Boner, among other things. Yeah, I kind of forgot that Suda51 also had a hand in this game, much like Lollipop Chainsaw, which probably explains all that. Dude's got quite the colorful mind and imagination, that's for sure. I'm looking forward to revisiting, or perhaps it's better to say re-experiencing Shadows of the Damned here with this Hella remaster. Between this, Lollipop Chainsaw, and Dead Rising's remasters all releasing within like a month of one another, I'm curious to see if we'll get any other cool 7th gen games coming back as well. I don't know, but it's pretty cool regardless that all these happen around the same time, and I'm glad more people can try out all these games, as I think they're all very unique, wacky, and fun titles. Shadows of the Damned Hella Remastered will be releasing on Thursday, October 31st for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. And to close out the month, also on Halloween, we have the long-awaited return of Dragon Age with the latest entry, Dragon Age Dreadwolf, I mean, the Veilguard. Yeah, I still kind of find that name change to be a downgrade, but oh well. But yes, after over a decade of waiting, it's finally almost time to dive back into the world of Dragon Age. I'm not the biggest, most diehard fan of the franchise myself, as I've only really played Inquisition, though I quite enjoyed that game, and this new entry here is looking pretty good too. It looks to have everything you'd want from a new Dragon Age, with the intricate story and choices you can make that will affect its progression, an in-depth character creator, branching abilities and skills for your combat classes, and some nice looking visuals and environments too. It may not be as exciting an action RPG to myself as something like Ys 10, but this is still looking to be a worthy return for the franchise. If nothing else, I'm happy for those diehard Dragon Age fans, as, man, it's been quite a wait for them. I sincerely hope it lives up to their expectations. Dragon Age The Veilguard will be releasing on Thursday, October 31st for PS5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. And that's that. All the games I'm looking forward to in this spectacularly spooky month of 2024. Tons and tons and tons of great stuff here. And there's even more that I didn't mention here too, like the Diablo 4 expansion, Batman Arkham VR game, new Life is Strange game, and a little game you may have heard of called Call of Duty. Whichever way you look at it, it's a stacked month for games, and a great time for those of us who do the playing of them. While I of course have my standout picks for the month, I would very much like to get to all the games I discussed here, and I look forward to playing them, be it on launch day, and slightly before launch day, or sometime later in the near future. But for now though, I think that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, I thank you for watching. Your continued viewership and support is greatly appreciated. As is ever the case, I hope I was able to bring to your attention some cool new games you may not have known about, and entertain you with my vocal cord movements regarding them. And last, but certainly not least, as always, I'll see you next time.